Hey, welcome back to the About the Labor podcast here at VikingsTerritory.com. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today we're talking a 20-17 Minnesota Vikings victory over the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field, just the second of this nature since the Bush administration. So we got plenty to talk about here today, so we're just going to jump right into it. Starting off with a word from our sponsor, as always here, Black Stag Brewing. Brand new brewery smack dab in the middle of Minneapolis and St. Paul with a wide range of clean and flavorful brews and a massive bright tap room perfect for intimate settings, all the way to special events. That's Black Stag Brewing, 755 North Pryor, just north of Menards off of University Avenue. And shout out to anyone that made it out for the viewing party at Black Stag tonight. I heard it was good stuff, and I hope you guys enjoyed the game and enjoyed some of their beverages. I'm currently enjoying one of their New England IPAs here, and it's absolutely fantastic. Highly recommend it. So, moving on from beer here, let's talk about Case Keenum to start, because I guess Sam Bradford and Case Keenum to start. Sam Bradford couldn't really do a whole lot tonight. It was difficult to watch, in my opinion. I had a really tough time watching Sam Bradford out there struggling, very clearly unhealthy. It seemed like every time he hit the turf, whether by his own choosing or by Leonard Floyd, he was kind of like peeling himself off the ground. It sucked, man. It was terrible watching Bradford out there. He's clearly still not healthy, not recovered from that knee injury. Then Case Keenum comes in and saves the day in the second half, and I know he didn't light it up by any means, but the Vikings offense was night and day, from the Bradford one-legged offense to the Case Keenum second half offense. What's your instant reaction to what you saw from Case Keenum tonight, what you saw from Sam Bradford tonight, just kind of your overall takeaways moving forward here?
Well, I didn't get to see a lot of Sam Bradford, which probably is a good thing, because for those who don't know, I had night class until about I turned the TV on at about the 5-minute mark of the second quarter, somewhere in there. Actually, the very first play I saw was the Everson Griffin strip sack. So that, for reference and where that is in the game. But I saw Bradford complete, I think, a really short pass, and then he took that sack where he just kind of crumbled into like a little shell and just fell over. That kind of, to me, signaled, okay, because I had seen the social media feeds and stuff during class, like, okay, this guy clearly isn't ready to play, yada yada yada. But I was like, whatever, he's probably fine, I'm sure. But it was a lot worse than I had imagined. So I think he's done for the season. I don't think he plays another snap. I said this on the VT roundtable, the post game roundtable. It's so tough, and I think he rushed himself back, and the Vikings rushed him back. He wasn't ready to play, and I'm sure it only got worse on the Soldier Field turf. Plus, he's got a short week to come this week. He's definitely not playing against the Packers. And then, Teddy comes back after the Packers game. It's a wild situation. And I think
perfect for Vikings territory.
I think it's going to end up with Bradford being kind of the odd man out sort of in this quarterback situation, given the injury.
Can I just say this? I just thought of this now. How good because it seems like this knee, the bone bruise or whatever, is a lingering issue. Right. I saw Ben Lieber on Twitter say that face that Sam Bradford had, that that just kind of, he looked dead, he looked pale, was the thought of how this is going to affect his future from Ben Lieber's vantage point, a former NFL player, former Viking, of course. And I kind of buy into that. I'm scared for Sam Bradford's future, and my point that I wanted to raise here was, how good does it look, the Vikings' decision to not pick up Teddy Bridgewater's fifth-year option and decide not to extend Sam Bradford and basically see how it plays out this season? How good is that looking right now? Because Sam Bradford, it seems like, this might hinder the rest of his career. I hate to say that, and I don't want to assume too much. I'm by no means a physician, but it really, really looked like this was a defeated Sam Bradford tonight. And I'm nervous that this might, like you said, might be the last play he sees in a Vikings uniform, and this might be the last time we see Sam Bradford really play at a very high level in the NFL.
It felt like it definitely felt like he was hiding it. Like, it was one of those things where you, I guess I'm assuming players did this before they kind of had the official concussion test and stuff, but like, it felt like he was hiding his injury, playing it off as it wasn't that bad. And then, as the game kind of, he officially found himself in the game, he kind of realized, yeah, okay, I can't hide this anymore. And it's just one of those things that I'm assuming the training staff messed up. I'm assuming the coaching staff messed up, and he probably messed up too in telling them, probably not leading him on to exactly exactly how much pain he was feeling. So Keenum was brought in at just about the right time, though. Keenum came in, and he didn't make any phenomenal throws. I think he just managed the game really well. I think the Bears gave him some relatively easy throws. I think he was 17 or 21 or something like that. So Keenum is, I'm so still kind of with him because again, what we have to work off of now, phenomenal game against the Bucs. Very, very iffy, struggling game against the Steelers. The Lions game was pretty meh. Some nice plays, a few nice throws, but a lot of missed opportunities as well. And this game I think was kind of hard to judge because I don't think the Bears really played well in the secondary. I think they gave him a lot of they were very cautious about letting guys go deep, so he would check down often. So I think he can be good enough to beat the Packers next week. I think he's going to have to pull off another phenomenal performance similar to the Tampa game, but I think the Vikings can be okay with him for the next few weeks as long as, whether it's either Bradford returning or whether it's Teddy getting healthy. I think Keenum will be serviceable until then.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly wish Sam Bradford the best moving forward here. Man, that look of horror in his eyes, it just seemed like this is bigger than just one game to me. So I guess we'll see how it plays out. We'll see, if this is really just a bone bruise and something that requires another month or so to heal, and maybe he did rush back out of fear of losing his starting position to Teddy Bridgewater. I've seen that idea tossed around, and I don't hate it because I totally understand a player's mentality in that position where someone's coming for your job and there's a chance that you might be able to save it. I totally get that. So I don't really blame Zimmer as much for this as a lot of people do. I saw a lot of people demanding an explanation. I think the explanation is pretty simple. Sam Bradford convinced his coach he was going to play, and Zimmer is to some degree a player's coach who believes his players, trusts his players, works hard in unison with his players. And I think that he truly believed that Sam Bradford was ready, and I'm assuming Eric Sugarman probably gave him the go. So, why wouldn't you? Maybe he didn't take him out soon enough. In terms of the scoreboard, it seemed like he took him out soon enough, like Drew said, but maybe from a medical standpoint, he should have been out of there earlier. It seemed like the warning signs were apparent almost from the get-go. So for that reason, I understand. But generally, I think that Mike Zimmer probably made the right call trying to win this football game with his best quarterback who said he was able to go. So that's kind of my mentality there. I know people oppose that. I'm fine with that. You think what you think. That's cool with me. So, let's move into a little bit more on the offense still, and we'll flip over to the defense after that. We got to talk about the running back position. I think that Jerick McKinnon's performance tonight took a lot of us by surprise, not because people didn't see McKinnon having the potential to do the things that he did tonight. For those of you that didn't catch the game, a 58-yard touchdown, a couple of very nice runs, a couple catches out of the backfield that went for long gainers as well. There are some people that probably just didn't simply see, myself included, I didn't see McKinnon having as big of a role as he did. And my theory here is that it's a hot hand type thing. Pat Shurmur saw McKinnon get going a little bit, saw that Murray was, not doing a whole lot. I mean, he was very solid in my opinion, but not doing anything explosive. So he kept giving McKinnon touches because he was kind of the better chance to hit the home run, which, again, I totally understand that mentality there and the decision-making. So what did you think of Jerick McKinnon? What did you think of Latavius Murray? I guess C.J. Ham had a couple carries as well. Your thoughts on the running backs for the Vikings tonight, and moving forward, what do you think the situation is going to look like? Bring out your crystal ball.
Nice little cultural reference there. Yeah. But I thought they were fine. This is kind of what we expected. Obviously the 58-yard touchdown is obviously a really that kind of inflated things a little bit. But I mean, for McKinnon, I think the thing I was mostly impressed with was his receiving ability. He had 6 catches, 51 yards. Really looked like a threat that we've kind of sort of expected and kind of waited for with McKinnon to kind of eventually happen. And we saw that a little bit tonight. And I think, again, the 58-yard touchdown really inflated his average from, without that touchdown, it's like under 3 yards a carry. But obviously they had then the breakaway touchdown. He had a couple runs that got called back. So, and then with Murray, I think he was fine. He was what we expected. I thought he had a little bit of lateral movement there that I didn't expect on a few plays, but I think this combo can be pretty good. Nothing elite, nothing terrible. Just kind of a middle average, running attack with this offensive line that seems to be improved. So it's going to be a good 1-2 punch. I think, again, the hot hand thing will be kind of crucial going forward because I think McKinnon kind of down the stretch, I think he really kind of picked it up, and I think it was right to go to him as long as he obviously didn't fumble, which I was very concerned about.
So moving forward here, I think predicting, if you're someone, a fantasy football person, or you simply love, enjoy analyzing the game and trying to predict the future, your own crystal ball, I think that the thing to watch here is running back efficiency, which is super important and something that I've been talking about a lot on recent shows here. I think it's important to watch to see which running back of these two guys moving forward, Latavius Murray or Jerick McKinnon, is able to pick up 4 yards, first downs, or touchdowns on their carries here. Watch for that, and the guy that does that more consistently, I think that, in my opinion, kind of is a quantifiable way to determine who the hot hand is. So if you can do the mental math during your game, I think you'll be able to sort of predict which running back is going to see the lion's share of the carries here moving forward. So, but as it stands for Green Bay, I think you go out there with McKinnon as your guy and still mix and match a little bit with Murray, the Thunder and Lightning combo that Drew likes to talk about all the time. I still think that works, and this running back position really stepped up in a big way too for me, especially in the second half. You saw that the offense wasn't getting going at all in the first half. A lot of that, probably 90% of that was the fact that Sam Bradford was playing on one leg, but the other 10% was simply that nothing else was going right either. You weren't seeing explosive runs, you weren't seeing long carries. There just really wasn't much going on that was good during the first half of play. It was a difficult first half to watch for sure. But you saw the Vikings respond well both at the quarterback position and the running back position. And, I think that probably says something about the Vikings as well. Their ability to come out from half leading 3-2 and end up, getting a game-winning field goal out of Kai Forbath. So, overall, solid performance. I'm pretty stoked. I thought the Vikings were going to win this game. On paper, it looked good, but
right.
Soldier Field, man.
Yeah, this is those, I think. This is one of those games that I think the 2016 Vikings lose. Just kind of, that was the difference to me between 2015 and 2016, were these close games that you had to make the right plays at the right time. You had to make kind of those Harrison Smith interceptions like in this game that are kind of the difference. And they didn't do that in 2016 very well. And I think you can point to this game as kind of a signal that they are more similar now, in that way anyway, to the 2015 Vikings. So at least it helps in looking at it that way, because I think Detroit, you could argue, is kind of a similar game where it was close. You got to make those plays at the end of the game, but this helps a lot. This is a crucial game, especially now with Bradford even further. Again, his diagnosis is probably worse now, and his outlook. This is more of a must-win game than initially it was perceived. So coming with Green Bay now this week, it's not necessarily a must-win, but to get to 4-2 and to have kind of that edge on the Packers would be certainly a nice advantage. Yeah,
that's a big win here, and we are getting towards the median point in the season now. Getting closer and closer every week through 5 games now. We're about,
and that's going too fast.
Yeah, it is going by pretty quick here. So before we jump into defense, I just want to talk about Kai Forbath a little here. The special teams, just because I don't want to forget about it, and I think this is a talking point that it deserves to be discussed to some degree. And what'd you think of Kai Forbath coming in there? Obviously, he hits a couple PATs tonight, and then he hits the chip shot, which, now, this is why I think it's important. The chip shot on paper it's a chip shot. You expect him to make it, but this has really been the primary issue for Kai Forbath. Has been missing from 27 and inside.
No, I mean he's been missing mid-range, like kind of gimmies, but they have. 26 yards.
The extra points are 27. That's what he's been missing a ton of.
The extra points are 32.
Okay,
but still, that's still a chip shot. It's supposed to be a chip shot as an extra point. They didn't move it to 40 yards away. They moved to 32. But I'm not ready to buy him yet. This isn't a game that screams to me, "Oh, Kai Forbath is back" or anything like that. It's just he made 4 kicks that are supposed to be made. If he starts making 40-something yarders with some consistency here, then I'll start to believe in him again. But we've been doing post-game stuff, since the game ended. But I think I saw briefly the Vikings video or Vikings media team put together a video of Zimmer talking to the team after the game, and it kind of gave a shout out to Kai Forbath next to him. I think he might have got the game ball actually. So that's kind of cool to see. Anyway, it looks like the team is still behind Kai Forbath. Despite some struggles here early in the season. So that's good. It looks like the team's trusting him, and hopefully that should help him psychologically.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my main takeaway. That's what I was going to say to you next here is that psychologically speaking, this is a big kick for Kai Forbath, right? I mean, moving forward, now he has something to hang his hat on. He's got a game-winning field goal. And yeah, it was a chip shot. Yeah, it relative to what we've seen from guys like Matt Prater in terms of hitting game-winning field goals, this doesn't tread water. But in terms of his psyche, I think this is a very big kick for Kai Forbath. And, it's impossible to project how mental state affects the football game, especially when you don't know Kai Forbath, as I don't. But I think that hitting this field goal can do a lot for him moving forward. And I think there's a good possibility that we'll see a better Kai Forbath moving forward, just because he does come in and he does hit that game-winning field goal. Vikings move to 3-2. That's got to feel good for the guy. So pat on, star on his helmet, I guess. I thought that he did his job, and that's all you're supposed to ask of your kicker, anyways. And so he gets a star on his helmet from me. Moving on to the defense here, I think this is really kind of the impressive part of this evening. We saw Mitch Trubisky do some pretty impressive stuff, but overall, he didn't do a whole lot. We saw the flashes of the potential. I think Bears fans have some stuff to kind of look at on film and be like, okay, this guy could be very good down the stretch. But the Vikings held both Tariq Cohen and Jordan Howard for the most part. There's a couple of good outside runs that they had both in the first half and the second half. And Trubisky was down the stretch. I think there was a period where he was like 1 for 10 throwing the football.
Yeah.
So this defense played a very, very good football game. Obviously, you get the strip sack from Everson Griffin that kind of flipped the field, and you get the game-winning interception from Harrison Smith. So this defense, through 5 games, it doesn't have the turnover numbers. It doesn't have the sack numbers. It doesn't have the ridiculous fantasy point totals that last year's edition did. But I'm going to go back to my point that I think I made last week. This defense seems much more sustainable this year.
Right.
And if you just get 18 to 20 points, the magic number has always been 21. They get 20 tonight and they win the football game. This defense really seems geared up to be able to win those types of football games.
Well, yeah, and I think the Bears got a fluky 17 points too. I mean,
yes.
You get a fake punt, pass for a touchdown, and then you get a touchdown pass by Trubisky, which A, was a very, very dumb decision. B, was underthrown, and C, got a very lucky bounce off of Sendejo's hand. So, I mean, 17 points allowed, sure, but it's more like 8-ish. I mean, if you talk about the touchdown, the 2-point, and the safety, and then the punt pass touchdown that they got as well, that's 9 points there. And then the 2-point conversion was actually really cool. I'll give Dow Loggins and that defense and that offense credit for that. That 2-point conversion, awesome. Which, by the way, I feel like Zach Miller actually improvised that little pitch, but maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, that's not important right now.
An option. It looked like an option to me. So
sure,
so he made a decision.
But Xavier Rhodes was not targeted in this game once, so we do know Trubisky's a smart player because he's not targeting Xavier Rhodes. Everson Griffin, I thought, was
targeting
really
Harrison Smith. He targeted Harrison Smith 4 times. So is he a smart player? We'll see.
Yeah, I mean that throw, that interception was a bad throw as well. Bad decision, actually. And then Everson Griffin, I think, was really, really good, both against the run, setting the edge, and obviously had the strip sack too, putting some pressure on Trubisky, making it difficult for him. So I think the star players did their jobs like they usually do. I don't think there's anything to worry about there. Sendejo made some nice plays, but I think the defense just it was another day at the office. It was just something we expect from them on a typical basis.
Yeah, they gel. I think the defense is gelling very, very well. Just because when you get into this type of situation where you can't really pick out 1 or 2 players that made the unit great, as opposed to you talk about all the different impact we saw tonight from different types of players. Andrew Sendejo was very good tonight. He had a crushing blow on Marcus Wheaton, which they picked up the flag, thank God, because it was actually a very good form hit. Absolutely clubbed him. It was great. You saw Harrison Smith get the game-winning INT. Anthony Barr had an unbelievable kind of tussle play in the backfield where he initially whiffed on Tariq Cohen and then ended up getting him and still for a tackle for the loss. Eric Kendricks was pretty solid tonight. I didn't think he was great by any means. Linval Joseph continues to be a wrecking ball in the middle. Tom Johnson looks very slow in space, but when he's pass rushing up the middle, he looks very good. Everson Griffin gets a strip sack, changes the momentum of the game. I mean, this is a complete effort. Mackenzie Alexander gets a low mark from me, and Trey Waynes was sufficient in my opinion. But other than that, everyone else looked very, very good, top to bottom. I mean, front to back, this defense is really looking good.
The concern we had in going to this game, mainly, if you guys had listened or I guess had tuned into our pregame show that was on Shindig and Periscope and YouTube before the game, we talked a lot about Tariq Cohen and how dangerous he is, both as a receiver, as a runner. Just how electric he is with the football. He had 12 total yards on offense.
Yeah.
I believe he had a -1 receiving yard and then 13 rushing yards on 7 touches total. Not bad. Not bad. Jordan Howard got his, kind of got his. I think he had something in the 70s for rushing yards. But our big thing before the game was you contain those two guys, you're going to have a good chance. And even though they still almost, let this one slip away, the Bears offense was definitely not the reason that the Vikings hypothetically would have lost this game. It's just a bunch of other gadget and quirky plays.
Considering the Vikings offense, if the Vikings hadn't only played one half of offense, if they had played a full game, this is probably a blowout. You'd think it would be at least, just because of how the combination between how good the defense was playing and how stable that offense was, I guess, and Case Keenum being able to make there's a couple throws that Sam Bradford missed that I even expect Case Keenum to make. There were some really bad throws for Bradford, and I think the initial thought was he needs to kind of get back in there, feel it out, get back on the same page. But man, all roads lead back to Bradford right now. I understand that, but man, he just looked really, really awful out there. Just I was waiting for the moment where I would say to myself, okay, he's back, we're ready to go. And it never came. And so I think that's, a tribute to both Case Keenum.
I'm going to ask you this because I didn't see much of the first half.
Right.
I saw just a couple of plays here before he was pulled, but did he literally move at all in the pocket? Was he literally just standing there?
There was one play where he actually moved out of the pocket more than I've really ever seen him do it. It looked like he was pushing himself.
Was he comfortable? Okay.
No, it did not look comfortable. It was actually a pretty nice pass, but he did not look comfortable. He very clearly was forcing the issue tonight. I think that he was there was really something going on with him, whether it was just the knee or a combination between, being afraid to get hit on top of the knee and what might happen if he gets hit.
That definitely was a problem with that sack he took when Elflein kind of backed into him. He was so scared of getting hit on that knee or somebody stepping on the knee or something. He just is all right, this isn't worth
collapsed.
It. All right, yep, just fell over.
Yeah, so going back to the point, I mean, Sam Bradford, man, I wish him the best, but it's kind of one of those situations where you hope for the best and you hope for the best and expect the worst with him. So I think we're going to be having some more Teddy Bridgewater conversations in the relative future here. I see those coming on the horizon. But until then, let's talk a little bit more about this game, and then we'll get into the Twitter questions for this evening and wrap this thing up in a quick 35 or so. Offensive line, we got to talk about that. We got a 5-game sample size now, so this was another strong performance. I thought Mike Remmers was very solid. I thought Riley Reif continues to be one of the best free agent signings across the league in terms of impact. I thought Elflein was incredible in space, particularly on that Jerick McKinnon long touchdown. You saw him, run out there with Jerick McKinnon and basically get in the way, as Sam Newman put it on the VT roundtable. Yeah. So he was impressive. I mean, obviously you have that kind of that weird sack that you just mentioned, which is on him, of course, and a very good bull rush by Eddie Goldman. But just in general here, what did you think from the offensive line today? And just overall, like I said, we've got a good 5-game sample size. How do you feel about this unit? I guess, how do you feel about this unit both relative to the Vikings and what you expected, and then just overall, I mean, is this offensive line, a truly competitive offensive line?
I think by now we can say this line is here to stay, obviously barring injury, knock on wood. But it's, Riley Reif has been really, really good. I think Mike Emmers has been, better than I expected for sure. I think he was the one who gave up the safety in this game, from what I remember on the highlight. But again, I think Bradford
That's
was very
100%
reluctant.
on Bradford.
He was very reluctant to throw the football. So yeah, and then Elfline's been consistently improving week to week, from what I can tell. Berger is still kind of himself. He's still rock solid. Easton
he did not have a good game though. Joe Berger did not have a good game.
Sure. Yeah. Easton got hurt. We got Searles in there, but I think either way, there's not much of a difference there as far as I think that left guard position's kind of been the weak link of this unit this year to this point. But overall, very solid. I would say they're right around the middle tier as far as offensive lines in the NFL go, which is way higher than I expected to put the Vikings at this point. So moving forward, obviously protecting the quarterback is vitally important, given the injury situations of 2 of the 3 or 4, I guess, quarterbacks on this roster. But I definitely feel a lot more confident now than I would have if given this injury situation than I would have 4 months ago or 3 months ago.
Okay, so now that this quarterback position has sort of became a revolving door, the running back position is going to be hot hand moving forward. I think it's fair to sort of frame the Vikings' recipe for success moving forward. That's elite defense and good offensive line play.
Wow.
That's going to win some football games. Like, if you just kind of like let that sink in here in terms of the impact of those 2 units. Your defense is a top 5 defense, and if your offensive line performs the way that it has, I don't know how to quantify their ranking, where how good they actually are, but they've been consistent. They're giving time in the pocket for 3, 5, and 7-step drops. They're playing very well. So the Vikings literally have a pretty solid recipe for success here with a very solid defense and a solid offensive line. An elite defense, and then kind of a revolving door at quarterback. It doesn't really matter who's at quarterback right now for the Vikings so long as they can get to 20 points. And with the running back position, I guess we'll see. It's a good first impression, though.
Right. I mean, this has kind of been the last few years, really, the mantra of this team, I guess. You're spearheaded by really good defensive play, kind of holding teams, containing teams to that 20 or below 20 kind of threshold,
right?
And then your offense just kind of has to be good enough to get over 20. That's kind of been the Mike Zimmer sort of way of winning. And last year, it was Sam Bradford trying to will the team to 23 points or whatever it was. This year, it's going to be a little bit different, where you have an offensive line that's stable enough to have a balanced offense that can win, whichever way is hot. If your run game is hot, you can go that way. If Case Keenum or Teddy Bridgewater or Sam Bradford or Kyle Sloter or Colin Kaepernick or whoever's hot at quarterback, if they get hot, then you can go that way. So I think it only helps the Vikings that it's more sustainable that way. You're not relying solely on the arm of one player.
And pick sixes, too.
And defensive touchdowns. Yeah, right. That was how it was last year when there was a 5-0 start. And then
right.
it was just clear that this wasn't going to continue.
Okay, so I've got 2 more questions for you now before we jump into the questions that people have for us. First one here. The Vikings stand at 3-2. Like I said, we have a good sample size of what this team is now. Would you rather have the 5-0 Vikings from last year, knowing kind of how that team was going to collapse, meaning that it was sort of injury based, but there was also some inconsistency and some also falling apart defensively because they simply weren't getting the type of production they were last year? Or would you rather have this Vikings team? Basically, the simple way to ask this question is, do you like the 2015 Vikings more or the 2016 Vikings more? And I know that without knowing the answer to the 2016,
you mean the 2016 or 2017
yeah,
Vikings?
Excuse me. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. This is weird because it's so hard to not attach the record that they had to this.
I'm saying without knowing what's going to happen this year, this is a very difficult.
I mean, I think you have to pick this year just because
there's more opportunity. I understand that.
Right. It's so much more sustainable, and I think too, I'm going to kind of put the schedule on here as well, where the second half, or I guess after the bye week, is just brutal. There's so many road games. I think there's like 2 more home games after the bye or something, like nothing on the at home. So I feel like this team can win much more easily on the road, or at least has the opportunity to, given that the offensive line is generally stable, and that way you can there's multiple ways you can win with that offense. It's not just pass game, have to get hot there. So It's weird because I'm attaching the record of 3-2 versus 5-0, and clearly you pick 5-0.
Right,
But
right.
Knowing what we know about the teams and the personnel, I think you have to pick this season.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. That's the answer that I was looking for. Is that you look at the record and you say, a 5-0 team is a 5-0 team. Obviously, you want to go 5-0. But at the same time, you have to, now that we have a 5-game sample size, something to project with moving forward, and looking back at last season and how, there was a lot of people through 5 games for the Vikings last year that said that they're projecting a second half of the season slide simply because last year's numbers were so unsustainable. And I think that this year there's reason for hope moving forward because of how sustainable this defensive play has been, this offensive line play. I mean, the Vikings receivers basically were essentially shut down by Sam Bradford to some degree, but tonight, and the Vikings were able to find a way to win a different way, which is something that you just pointed out as well. So I like this team too. I think the Vikings, kind of boiling it down to a simple point, I like the Vikings more in 2017 than I did in 2016. That's what I was looking for. So the final question here I got for you is, we talk a lot about the quarterback's position raising the level of play around guys, right? We talk about receivers sometimes elevating their quarterback's performance. We sometimes talk about defensive players in a similar light. Offensive line. Is the offensive line making the Vikings better? Is the offensive line making Jerick McKinnon better? Case Keenum is probably having the best season of his career right now. Are they making him better? Are they making Bradford has the best game of his career? Are they making him better? I mean, that's kind of, again, I understand it's only 5 games, but through 5 games, are these guys making the Vikings offensive players better that they impact?
It's probably that's something that never crossed my mind, because it's something that as someone that's been watching the Vikings for my whole life, I've never thought of the Vikings offensive line, and probably it's been 8 years probably since the Favre time, where I've thought about the offensive line as a strength of this team. But I think that's what it is. I think that definitely is playing a part of it. The fact that how many sacks has Riley Reif allowed this year? It's got to be
0.
Is it still 0?
Yeah.
So the fact that you can, as a quarterback, as Case Keenum, sit there and comfortably, you know that you're not going to get hit from behind you. You can get comfortable. There's usually a pocket there to move up, and he's been pretty good about moving around in the pocket after that Pittsburgh game. Anyway, I think it's definitely helping this team. At least, and obviously it's helping things extremely compared to last season too, with some of these guys that have been still on the roster, with Diggs and Thielen for sure. Their production's rising dramatically because of how much time the quarterback has to throw.
You could just do more stuff. I mean,
right.
It's a simple explanation, but you could just do more stuff behind this offensive line, and that's that's a big piece of going back to the last point that we were just talking about. That's a big piece of why I like the 2017 Vikings more than 2016. It's simply because this offensive line, again, knock on wood for injuries. Obviously, that was a big piece of what happened last year, but this offensive line has so much more potential than last year's unit. I think we talked about that beginning in March, that this 5-man front just simply it has the feel of a better overall unit with a considerably higher potential, and it seems to be playing out that way. And you hope that this continues, and it looks like it will, because a big thing for the Packers next week is that they aren't able to get good pressure on the quarterback because they only have 1, maybe 2 guys, Mike Daniels and Clay Matthews, that create pressure. You see Blake Martinez getting a little bit better, but basically if you can stop the Packers from getting pressure next week, and that secondary is horrid still, you got to start feeling a little bit better about Packers week for the next game at US Bank here, just simply because the offensive line has become a strength, which I think is very important here. So all that said, let's jump into the Twitter takes for tonight. Yep. What do we got in the mailbox, Drew?
First one here is from Kyle Splickall at KSplick. He's just asking about Stephon Diggs' kind of injury concerns. What is your level of concern regarding I think he had to sit a few times for some groin problems in this game. What is your level of concern there moving forward?
Level of concern, anytime Stephon Diggs sustains some sort of lingering injury, is probably an 8 for me. Just because we've seen it as a reoccurring thing, whether it's a hamstring or a groin, it scares me. So I would monitor his injury report status this week, see how much of I would expect him to be limited at least early this week. Obviously, it's a short week too, so he's got to get himself prepared quickly. But I would say immediately I'm not raging concerned, but it's not my level of concern that I have for Dalvin Cook after he had his injury. but just the fact that we have seen the history of Stephon Diggs basically playing a 12 to 14 game season his entire career, it makes me nervous. So about an 8 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, that's where I am too. Probably it's just because looking at Diggs' history in this league and when he's been on the injury report versus not, like his production, it's completely different. Like I can't remember who tweeted it, but somebody tweeted his stat lines of like the last how many games when he has not been on the injury report in any capacity, and it's just absurd the numbers he's putting up as far as a catch and yards per game basis. So that's obviously concerning, and it just seems like these type of injuries affect him more than an average player. So yeah, it's definitely a concern here. But our last question here from Josh Swedland at Swedeskull. It's kind of the $1 million question here. Sam Bradford rushed himself back. What did he do so with Teddy Bridgewater's impending return in his mind?
Yes, 100%, 100%. Yeah. If you don't have a guy breathing down your neck, you don't rush yourself back from injury, in my opinion. You got to make a business decision, something that Sam Bradford has done about as well as anyone.
So you think then Bradford was maybe stretching the truth to the training staff and to the coaching staff about how actually he was feeling with his knee?
Phrasing is interesting there because I can't imagine Sam Bradford lying. I just don't see him as a guy that exaggerates the truth. But I can totally see him being like, yep, I'm fine. I'm ready. That's what I can see. I don't see him stretching. Well, that would be
kind of lying then. That would be lying in this situation because he clearly wasn't ready.
Right. But I just don't see it. I guess I just don't see him as like stretching the truth. I see him just kind of being like, yeah, I'm good. Like just keeping it really simple so that there isn't something to poke a hole in. And I definitely, he sees Teddy Bridgewater at practice. He knows Teddy Bridgewater on Twitter. He knows Teddy Bridgewater's franchise icon status in Minnesota. Yeah. You have to be. If he wasn't, he should have been.
Yeah. There's a history, a documented history of Sam Bradford not liking to be known as the second fiddle at quarterback. Yeah. Philadelphia fans can attest to this. When the Eagles drafted Carson Wentz a year ago, he didn't like that. Yeah. So there's clearly, I definitely think it crossed his mind. I think people are going to be a little bit scared to maybe admit that because it's been one of those things. I think some people have kind of really actively tried to avoid. Okay, Bradford and Teddy are not, they're not the same right now. They're not affecting each other right now, but we're getting closer and closer to that being a real thing where this debate could happen. I think Bradford's injury might actually prevent it from happening, but I really do think Bradford kind of saw the situation and saw that he has only a certain small window here where he can prove himself as a starter moving forward, and he tried to take advantage of that opportunity, but it was just too soon. He wasn't ready, and now it looks like Case Keenum is going to be the guy until maybe Teddy Bridgewater is ready. Otherwise, Case Keenum's going to be the guy for the foreseeable future here.
Okay. Yeah. I'm with you all the way. We did have one question that we missed on our Shindig pregame show that I wanted to get to real quick. Oh, sure. I don't believe the person had a name, so I apologize for not attributing this question to you, but someone asked us about Kenny Vaccaro, the Saints safety, which I do think is an interesting topic and something that we probably should have discussed, when the trade block rumor came out, a couple weeks ago. So, if you're not aware, New Orleans has put safety Kenny Vaccaro, formerly of, I believe, Texas. Extremely versatile in the box safety, high tackler. He would be a very good complement, in theory, to Harrison Smith. Basically, and you get two guys that are going to be entering the prime of their career. This is a guy that's about to end his first contract. I believe he's a free agent after next season. So what do you think of the potential of trading for Kenny Vaccaro? Do you think it's real? Or do you like it? Just from your perspective, and do you think the Vikings would actually entertain this, as we get closer to the deadline here?
I do. I like it, but I'm not willing to give up a whole lot because I just think I'm not willing to give up a pick for a guy that probably wouldn't, play a whole lot. I do think though that the Vikings don't have the best safety depth by any means, so adding to that it's a great idea. I just would be cautious about giving up a pick that's too high. But yeah, I do think the Vikings safety depth could improve, and I think this would be one way to do it. It just have to be, a relatively low pick, something in the mid rounds or something like that, or maybe even, 6th or 7th round pick, something. I think it's probably
gonna take a 4th and probably like a 7th, which I personally am okay with. But I don't think it's going to happen, and this is why. I think the Vikings love Andrew Sendejo. Seriously, I think the Vikings are like attached to him, and I don't blame them because he knows everything that's going on out there. He doesn't always make the right play, he doesn't always execute perfectly, but he's always in the right spot, and I think Mike Zimmer really appreciates that. I don't see them making a change, which if you trade for Kenny Vaccaro, that's a guy that needs to get on the field. He's a very quality player with a lot of potential moving forward. The only reason that New Orleans is amped to trade him is because they've got two good young safeties right now, Von Bell being one, and I can't remember the rookie they drafted this year that will be lining up next to him. So we'll see what happens with Kenny Vaccaro, but that is the end of our rapid reaction episode of the About the Labor here. Obviously, a fantastic win for the Vikings tonight. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed both the game and the Vikings Territory Roundtable and the About the Labor podcast. If you tune in for the pregame show, we really appreciate it. You can check it out every week, 1 hour prior to game time on Periscope, YouTube, or the Shindig app itself. That will continue to broadcast throughout the rest of the season here. And, iTunes, Stitcher, VikingsTerritory.com. Review if you want. We'd appreciate that as always. You can find us on Twitter at VikingsATLPod. And make sure to check out Black Stack Brewing. If you're down at the viewing party, make sure to give me a shout out. Let me know that you did it, that you went down there, and give me a review. So I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for all your support, and we will check you later on this week.